So the Hungaroring is 2.7 miles, 4.4 kilometers for the Europeans. Our great English producer always puts that conversion in for me because I certainly can't do it myself. Boasts 14 corners with only one DRS zone. It's a track that many of the drivers have said, guys, resembles a karting track, but I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing for us fans watching at home. Laurence, you said that last weekend could have been a boring one. There was some drama here and there. What do you think about this one?
Well, Budapest for a long time was considered a track where you get dull racing. It was too small, too difficult to overtake, and overtaking undoubtedly is difficult there. But weirdly, there's something about ever since we moved to these turbo hybrid engines, and I can't figure out what it would be, but around 2014, it started producing these really, really exciting races. Yeah, I think you always have to go there, maybe expecting the worst, but there's a few things that go on there. One is the heat. It gets very hot. If you thought France was hot, well, Budapest last weekend, certainly the temperatures were hitting 40 degrees or so. That is putting a lot of strain on a Formula One car, both the internals, just the reliability of it, but really especially the tyres and trying to manage that for a race. So that could be an interesting fact. And then the other side to it is that you get this 40-degree heat, and the only way that it breaks is with a thunderstorm. So we've had a number of races in recent years where we've had rain either just before the race or just after the start, and it makes for thrilling racing. Add water to Formula One, and it's usually pretty exciting prospect. So I'm going to go on the optimistic side this weekend after being pessimistic about France, and we actually got a reasonable race in France, and say that we are going to have a good race in Budapest.
I appreciate that. Oh, go ahead, Nate.
I was going to say the forecast does look like that as well. And it's got rain for both Saturday and Sunday. So it could be a good mix. But it's definitely hot as well. So there is that good mix there. So I'm fully on board with Laurence. Hungary, I always now just predict we're going to have a great race. Always tends to deliver something.
Hopefully the power remains on, because I think that's what caused part of the delay in Monaco, where we're all like, come on, get this race going, even though it's raining. So yes, rain always makes for excitement. As we mentioned, just a couple of few places to overtake, especially with some shorter straights. So Nate, what do you think some of the strategy will be for drivers this weekend?
Yeah, I think there is really only one proper place. And this is where these mixed up weekends can be quite interesting, because if Friday is just hot and there's no rain, a lot of the work they do, if it rains, later in the weekend, it kind of, the strategies have to be a lot different to the work they're doing there. But I don't know. I think tired egg, every year you go to a circuit and that's the question they're asking themselves on Fridays. But I think that track position here is going to be key. So you don't want to pit yourself early and end up in a bunch of traffic. It's very difficult to get, especially in the middle of that circuit, to get into clean air away from cars. So I can see some drivers trying some really long stints on tires, especially some of those guys further back. But yeah, very difficult to say. I think the rain, I'm really banking on some rain on Sunday, because Mercedes might just leave Lewis out on the grid again like they did last year. That was pretty memorable. But yeah, if you remember Ocon's win last year, obviously that rain at the beginning dried up super quickly. Again, because of how hot it was, the conditions almost changed. They changed super, super quick. And then it was basically just a race to the flag. There's the minimal pit stops, and that was it. So I can see the same happening this year for sure.
It's also a track where a lot of the teams will set their cars to maximum downforce for the weekend. Laurence, can you explain to us what that means? Yeah,
so a Formula One car, one of the big trade-offs when you're deciding your setup and how you're going to run it is how much wing you run. And essentially, the more wing you run, the more downforce you create, the faster you go around the corners. But you sacrifice straight line speed, because those big wings also create aerodynamic drag, which slows the car down. So it's a real trade-off. But at a place like Budapest, where it's mainly corners, because they say it's like a kart track because it's corner after corner after corner, and the drivers don't really get to rest until they get on that single straight, you can sacrifice a bit of straight line speed because you're going to make the lap time back up in the corners. So yeah, they do tend to go with the maximum downforce, and that's another reason why I think it could be a Ferrari track, because we've seen that Ferrari find it a lot easier to put downforce onto the car and maintain the performance, whereas part of Red Bull's whole design philosophy has basically been running usually slightly smaller wings, generating downforce from the underfloor of the car, of course, but also benefiting from straight line speed. But that strength they have won't deliver the lap time as much in Budapest as they did say in Paul car.
All right, if it's a Ferrari track, let's get to our predictions. Okay. Prediction time. Laurence, you were almost accurate. You said that you thought Lewis might get the victory in France. So let's turn to you first. Who do you think is going to win this Hungarian Grand Prix?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I was a bit off with predicting Mercedes victory, but this weekend I'm going to stick with everything I've just said. We've been talking about the Hungarian Grand Prix for a little while now, and I keep saying Ferrari. It will sit with Ferrari. So I'm going to say Charles Leclerc to bounce back and get a victory, because while Leclerc is error prone, the thing that we've very rarely seen, and this speaks to his mental strength, is him go into a downward spiral and make mistake after mistake after mistake. That's what we saw with Sebastian Vettel in 2018 after that Germany mistake that Nate referenced earlier, Hockenheim in the wet. He then just kind of really spiraled down and couldn't find the performance. I think Charles is actually the opposite. Sometimes he comes back even stronger. He said that after the French Grand Prix that he just wants to be alone. He wants to go back to his Monaco apartment, lock the door and think about what he's done. But I think in doing that, he will come back as a stronger driver. And I think that could put him with that car in contention for victory.
Yeah, I agree. Michael's. I know it's not always the most fun when Laurence and I just say the same prediction, but I mean, that's heart and head. You know, I really think we need to see Leclerc win, because if it's Max who wins, we go into the summer break and it's even bigger, that championship gap. So it will at least give like a glimmer of hope that there's some life in the championship. But I think if we're doing a top 3 prediction rather than a top, I think it would be, I would say Max second, splitting the 2 Ferraris, because I think that 1-2, I think it's optimistic still.
Given what you guys have educated me on throughout this episode, I would say that I'm hopeful Ferrari bounces back, but just given their pedigree and the mistakes that I've seen, I'm going to go with Max Verstappen. I think that he gets his 9th victory of the season. I think he gets it done for Red Bull. Christian Horner says he has been phenomenal and exceeded all expectations this season. And he's been so much fun to watch with consistency. So I'm going to go with Max Verstappen. We, of course, will see who's right, who's wrong once we break down Budapest and the Hungarian Grand Prix when we come back next week.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.